need the headsets as well. Hmm? We will. They're just coming, but we're going to get started. Ah, super. So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome. Can you hear me? If you can't hear me, you either. Can you hear me yet? Okay. Okay. Only Isabel can't hear me. So. So thank you very much for your time. By COP standards, we're starting on time. We want to focus on energy efficiency this afternoon. One of the signature achievements of COP28 was the agreement on tripling renewable capacity, but also doubling the rate of energy efficiency gains by 2030, something driven very much by both the COP28 presidency and the IEA. But it seems that much of the attention goes on the renewable capacity. And we want to turn the attention back to the energy efficiency, perhaps the easiest investment or the one that brings the fastest and quickest environmental benefits. And we have a terrific panel. We have starting here, Mr. Daniel Kiptu-Bagoria, the Director General of the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority in Kenya. Then Nadia Al-Saeed, the Chief Executive Officer of Bank Al-Etihad in Jordan. Then Odile Renaud-Basso, the President of EBRD, the organization I work for, of course. Dr. Fatih Birol, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. And then just very recently joined now on our panel, Mrs. Ruth Nankabirwa Sentamu. I very much hope I got that correct. The Minister of Energy and Mineral Development. And we're expected to be joined shortly by Amani Abou-Zeid, the Energy Commissioner for the African Union. But Dr. Birol, I want to turn to you first because you've really set the agenda on this in this area. And you typically, in my experience, always have at least one good number to orient our thinking about energy efficiency.
So, many thanks for, first of all, to EBRD for organizing this event, and my friend Odile for your leadership, Odile, not only in terms of clean energy, but looking more beyond the borders of Europe. And looking especially the good neighbors of Europe, and in this case Africa. So, dear colleagues, at the IEA, we consider energy efficiency as the #1 fuel. So some countries have fuel, oil, some gas, some renewables, some coal, but energy efficiency is the #1 fuel. And it is very important to make the most out of this potential. Some countries have oil potential, some countries have hydro potential, some countries have gas potential, but every country has the potential of energy efficiency to exploit. And Africa has the most of it, energy efficiency potential. But linking to what our chairman told us about what happened in COP28, where we are here today globally, I have one number, but this is not a good number, this is a bad number I have to share with you. Because what we have suggested during the COP28 and the 200 countries agreed around the world was doubling the energy efficiency improvement. Doubling meaning because in the last 10 years, global energy efficiency improved by 2% per year. And to reach our climate targets, this improvement rate needs to be 4% per year. So doubling, it was the case. But here comes the bad number. When we look at what is happening this year, 2024, 1 year after the COP28, global energy efficiency improvement will be only 1% this year. So not even the doubling, we are not even at the same stage, same level of the last 10 years. We are the half of the 2%, is a 1% improvement. And this is something really worrying. Even though the potential around the world, including in Africa, it is really huge, and it is not only important for climate change, but also for, and most important, for the economics of it and for the energy security. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I will give you one more number that we should pay attention to, and especially in Africa, which is the following. Today, around the world, electricity consumption is growing very strongly, much stronger than the energy consumption. So a few times higher the growth in electricity consumption than the energy consumption, because we are seeing around the world a lot of electrical equipments are used more and more in transportation sector, air conditioners, and everywhere. And you'll be surprised, in the entire world, #1 driver of the global electricity consumption is air conditioners, followed by everything else. And now, what is the linkage of air conditioners and the efficiency? It is the following. In Japan, for example, or in the United States, 90% of the households have an air conditioner. But in sub-Saharan Africa, it is 5%. Indonesia, 15%. India, 18%. And here, the efficiency of the air conditioners are so crucial that we need to bring them to the international levels. Just to give you an example, I finish here. In order to provide in sub-Saharan African air conditioners the same comfort that they provide compared to Japan, they need to use 4 times more electricity. So the efficiency standards, the efficiency performance of the air conditioners in Africa is 4 times worse than it is in Japan or somewhere else. So if we are able to bring the efficiency of air conditioners to the level of Japan or the international levels, we would need to use less electricity, therefore need to build less power plants, therefore need to spend less money. So therefore, efficiency is a key issue in Africa and elsewhere. I am thankful to EBRD to put an emphasis on this issue, to Odile, to you. And also we have now, I should perhaps introduce the commissioner just arrived from our African Union, and she's well aware, and she's one of the pioneers of pushing the energy efficiency in the African agenda. Over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. We really want to come to our panelists who have tremendous expertise in this, and I should slightly give the secret away, which is that EBRD will start working, having worked very much in North Africa, will start working in sub-Saharan Africa. So a part of our intention today is really to learn, because we know we have a lot to learn in this new world, and how we can bring things, how we can take a model that has worked in one environment to another. And maybe Odile, I can ask you to say a few words about our experience, but also our desire to learn.
Thank you, Harry, and thanks to all panelists to be here with us today to discuss this very important issue. Indeed, I think that, as Fatih underlined, we have the target on renewable, which is decarbonization of energy production, but we also have a global target on the energy efficiency, which is in a way producing, make the use of producing more, have growth with less energy intensity. And in EBRD, this was, since we've been created in '91, a key objective, because we were created to help development and development toward market economies of countries which were extremely energy intensive, coming out from the post-Soviet world, post-Soviet economies, which were very much reliant on coal, fossil fuel, and with a very low level of energy efficiency. So working, and these countries had a sort of infrastructure, everything was built for this system of high energy intensity. Well, be it the buildings, industries, energy system. So we put the energy efficiency very early on at the core of our mandate and our core of our investment. But now that we are moving into sub-Saharan Africa, after also started invested in Northern Africa a few years ago, this is a completely different environment because there is not this legacy infrastructure, energy inefficient and so forth. And there are a lot of opportunities for growth, be it for the demographic capacities, the innovation capacities, and so forth. But the challenge is to build a model which is energy efficient. And I think that in a way there is a chance of leapfrogging. In Africa, we talk a lot about leapfrogging in IT and digitalization and so forth. But in this energy efficiency system, I see this chance compared with countries where you have all this legacy industry, buildings, and so forth that has been set up with a different world in relation to energy. There is also a huge potential for renewable, and I think that there is, for me, the energy transition will create a shift in terms of where the energy generation capacities and potential is, and we already see this move, this shift towards Africa, and therefore I think there is really this opportunity to bring together the energy transition and energy efficiency on the same page and leapfrog. But we have a lot to learn, as Harry was saying, and that's why I'm very happy to participate to this panel, also to listen to colleagues and build on their experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Odile. And as Dr. Birol mentioned, Madam Amani Abou-Zeid, you've been a pioneer in this area, but let me also ask you a slightly provocative question, which is when we look at the energy consumption figures in sub-Saharan Africa, excluding South Africa, we see that they are 10% of, say, European or American levels. Should we even be talking about efficiency rather than just growing energy supply?
First, thank you very much for the question and for the provocation. I like that. But let me start by thanking also the organizers for to have the African Union here. Of course, we are long-standing partners with the IEA, and together we have been working on energy efficiency among so many other things regarding energy in Africa. But also I have a special connection with EBRD, since to come to North Africa in 2011, they came to my office asking where should we go in North Africa. Even we were about to host you in our offices in Rabat when they decided to go to Casablanca, and then they moved to Egypt. And later on I met with many of your VPs asking where to go, where to start in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. Then again, I'm saying Africa because for us at the African Union, there's no such thing as North and Sub-Saharan Africa. It's one continent, so we really insist on that. And we cannot exclude any country, whether it's Egypt, as I read in the concept note, or South Africa, because what people do not see is that even when you have 100% access to electricity, for instance, our demographies makes it hard to stop. We are in a constant race against ourselves because our population growth is so high that we cannot just what's available cannot be enough. Add to that the very serious climate issues. Just last summer, North Africa and the South Mediterranean, we have been subject to a very serious heat wave that lasted months and months and strained all our energy systems. Going back to your question, Africa as a whole, 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity. Let alone, and those who have electricity, their consumption is minimal compared to any other region in the world. But what we did not say, that 90% of our population does not have access to clean cooking. That's about 1 billion people. So is there, within such context, should we be talking about energy efficiency? And our answer is yes, yes, and yes. And that's exactly why we should be talking about energy efficiency. Energy efficiency for us means that whatever we save from the energy that is being produced could be availed to those who do not have electricity. And in our calculations in Africa, in the Commission for African Commission for Energy based in Algiers, I mean, we can save up to 175 trillion terawatt, which is equivalent of building 80 500 megawatt plants. So what we save from one side, we can deploy as energy saving, as energy access to others. But more than that, and I would urge us also to look at energy efficiency beyond the energy generation, energy production, to look at all sectors. We are plagued, and I'm using the word correctly, plagued in the continent by energy inefficient appliances, which inundate our markets. And this is a shared responsibility. Be it a car, be it a blender, be it an AC, it's the same thing. I think this is also an aspect where we, from both sides, from the producer side and also from our markets, we need to raise awareness, not only to put regulation. I mean, Africa has been working with all our countries regarding the regulation for appliances, but the enforcement of these regulation is not there because there is no awareness and because, yes, because they come cheaper, maybe from some sources. But what is happening now is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for, in order, to respond to the serious energy poverty that we're having. It's putting a very serious strain on our economies. And we have good examples. We have the Southern Africa region when they, with some really good intentions, they managed to almost save $200 billion. This is massive, and we have to take that into account. The other aspect that we must look into is grids, and I'm so happy but also apologetic because I would have to run soon from this session to go into another session about grids. We have to understand that in Africa, where grid exists, because it's not existent everywhere, where it exists, the losses are between 30 to 40%. So whatever we're going to produce is lost because, in a deliberated grid. So when we look at energy or efficiency, we have to look from end to end. And yes, it has to be there, it has to be enough, but also it has to be efficient because whatever we produce, it has to be, to optimize, the bang for a buck, to optimize whatever is being generated and produced. And the other call is for appliances, for equipment, for cars, whatever is being sent to markets or produced in our markets has to be regulated, surveilled, and this happens also by looking into both sides, those who produce and those who consume, and make sure that enough restrictions are put on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I already took notes and learned some things, including not to put arbitrary labels on particular parts of Africa and particular subregions. Madam, Your Excellency, Madam Nankabirwa Sentamu, if I can come to you now, because we are learning and we understand that Uganda faces a whole range of these energy challenges, from inefficient transport fleets to access to energy. It'd be very interesting to hear about your experience and how you're addressing some of those challenges.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity you've given me by inviting me here. Coming from Uganda, where we talk about renewable energy, almost 99% of our energy mix is renewable energy, where 90% is hydro, and then we have from solar and other clean sources. And the issue of efficiency is very critical. And to me, efficiency means efficient exploitation of the energy resources, exploitation and distribution and use of energy resources. And I heard my commissioner talk about energy loss, where almost in all African countries our energy loss is above 20–30%, but in Uganda it is 13% because of the laws that we have put in place. Right from the appliances you are talking about, most of the African countries are dumping areas. We have decentralized the old appliances you import it at your own risk. Old fridges, old computers. And in Uganda, we don't talk much about ACs because we have self-regulating weather, save for the hotels probably, but for domestic use, we just use natural climate. You can't hear? We just use natural climate. So Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act is very critical to regulate energy exploitation, to regulate energy usage, to regulate the areas of solar where we are looking at the mineral sector, to be able to add value to the minerals that are very critical, minerals like cobalt, copper, lithium, which we think can support when it comes to energy storage, because we want to use power day and night from solar. So that is very, very critical. Then the other provision in our act is to make sure that we use the rooftops to make sure that you tap the energy from the rooftops. There is no reason why in Africa one should have a house where you are not generating power from solar, yet we have sun from January up to January. So we need to regulate that. Then lastly, under our Eastern African Power Pool, we've decided to share the energy that we are not using because of lack of the distribution network. You put in money to generate power, like Uganda. In Uganda, we have 2,200 megawatts, but at peak, we use only above 1,000. That means almost 1,000 or 900 megawatts is not utilized. So what do you do with that power where you spent money to generate it? So we have constructed transmission infrastructure between Uganda and Rwanda. We are now exporting 40 megawatts, but we are upgrading this transmission infrastructure so that we can export 60, like we are exporting 60 megawatts to Kenya. We have a network with Tanzania. We are having power trade with Tanzania. We are constructing an infrastructure into DRC, both the road infrastructure and the electricity infrastructure. 400 kVA transmission line will see that part of DRC opened up, and I think insecurity, which is happening there because of lack of the critical infrastructure, will be solved. And so we have to integrate. We have to make sure that we integrate. And to me, that is what efficiency means. What can you get from the mineral sector? How can the mineral sector support the energy sector to make sure that we maximally benefit from the natural resources that we have? So law is very important to control trade, but also to control the quality of the appliances, and then upgrading the old infrastructure. We must have money specifically for upgrading of transmission infrastructure and other infrastructure, because that's where, again, we see power losses coming from. So that's where Uganda is targeting. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And coming from Britain, I would be delighted to have sun from January to February. So I'm very jealous of you having January to January. But interestingly, you also the third of our panelists to mention the importance of grids and of integration, which is one immediate lesson. Mrs. Saeed, if I can turn to you, I mean, coming from Jordan, you're very familiar with scarcity and adversity, not just energy, but also water. And I wonder if you can say a bit about Bank Al-Etihad's experience of trying to help its clients address those demands.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, indeed, I come from a country where stress is the name of the game. I mean, Jordan is really stressed on resources. It's stressed on its water resources. It's facing a lot of climate challenges, though we are on the adaptation side. But we do face water scarcity, drought, food security, and agriculture issues. So for us, really, this is a survivor issue, and it is really urgent. I mean, we do understand how urgent it is worldwide, and our local context, it's more so. Having said that, our bank, has been a bank that aligned its strategy with the national agenda and with the national objectives of the country. So we are a bank that has worked a lot. We own the women market in Jordan. We're one of the biggest supporters of SMEs and entrepreneurship, youth. And we have been one of the leaders in creating a green economy and tackling energy efficiency and trying to support Jordan in achieving its indices. Having said that, I think that these issues are within a category that needs to be addressed comprehensively, be it on a country level, on a sector level, or even on an institutional level. If you want to really create change, you need to do this in an integrated manner. It needs to be cross-cutting. It cannot be only by creating one pillar in the organization or one pillar in the country and to try to address this. It's one of these issues that needs to be embedded in everything you do. For Jordan, of course, the energy efficiency and the creating a green economy, also especially the energy efficiency, is so important because Jordan is a non-oil country. And it is the chance for the country to get out of its disadvantaged position regarding energy. And similar to what Madam President mentioned earlier about countries who try to create digital economies, we've done that, and now it's exactly the same. For us, the energy is infrastructure, it's an enabler. It's so important for the competitiveness of the country. It's one sector, if handled right, you can create jobs, you can attract investments, and you can really move the needle and change the competitive landscape in the country. So it's quite important, and Jordan has laid down very aggressive and ambitious targets in its indices and trying this. I think the target now is to try and reduce emissions by 31% of the business as usual scenario. So having said that, we as a bank, of course, for banks, financing is the challenge in these cases, but at the same time, financing is the opportunity for us, for banks. Because, for banks, what better than financing transition? What better than creating new demand? What better than dealing with your own customers who you know and actually helping them to go to the next phase and helping them to go to the next level? So with that and with the urgency required, we have always taken an approach of partnerships. I think because of what I mentioned in terms of the task being so huge and so integrated, you need partners. And this is the quickest path to achieving what you need to achieve. So we were the first bank in Jordan to sign the GIF agreement, which is the Green Economy Finance Facility. And this facility allowed us to get financing lines to help our customers, all MSMEs from around Jordan, to actually engage in energy efficiency and climate resilient technologies and products and services and projects. And we managed to actually tackle quite a big number of clients from the first 1 or 2 years. And we, of course, we tried to focus on supply chains and tried to focus on supply chains that are more critical to the country, things like the food production industry and around food production and agriculture. And with that said, we also signed another agreement with EBRD actually, which is the Paris Alignment Agreement, because as I said, which is the Paris Alignment where we needed to make sure that we actually align the bank's operation and money flows with the Paris Agreement objectives and targets to make sure we actually cover all the areas that need to be covered. With that, we embarked on quite an aggressive strategy and an aggressive roadmap. Because, doing this, you need to tackle governance, you need to tackle risk management, you need to look at data, you need to look at reporting, at monitoring. You need a lot of training for your staff and a lot of awareness for your customers. So basically, it's quite huge, but it is something that is doable. So I don't want to scare you. I have all these tables of lines and lines of roadmap, of what needs to be done. But the good news is that it's all on time and it's all being achieved through those partnerships. With that also, we managed to launch a great technical assistance component that actually helps our staff and helps our customers. in identifying opportunity, in actually understanding what needs to be done, in making sure that the financing is there as well. With that as well, we have launched, we've used actually the Green Finance Academy. We managed to train all the frontline, everyone, every single person from the frontline, not only the RMs, even the tellers, like in the bank have gotten into training, and we have something like more than 700 people from the bank are actually engaged on the full series on the platform, not only the basic training that is required, and we have different levels of beginner and advanced training for the employees that are at the bank. And we managed also to tap into the technologies available. For example, there's another platform. It's a platform that helps in technology selection. It's the Green Technology Selector. So it helps me really speed up the process in terms of, like helping customers and helping the bank understand which are the approved technologies, especially when you're talking about standard technologies and off-the-shelf products and services. And it also helps us support the local vendors as well by having them upload their products and services on the platform, and actually it can be provided with the local language in all the countries that EBRD exists in. So I'm saying it's just such a big journey, but it's such a rewarding one. And as I said earlier, I mean, like, we're ticking all the boxes. The regulator, the Central Bank of Jordan, has issued a green economy framework. And when we look at where we stand, actually, we have surpassed every target that is yet to be achieved based on those requirements. I think this needs, like an integrated approach, and we've worked with other private sector partners who can help us in everything. Like, we're part of the PCAF as well to make sure we do the reporting right. We have committed to issuing the sustainability reports. And, for us, the approach has always been from the beginning, to make sure that we in our sustainability report, we look at everything we do across ESG and everything we do in CSR and so on. So I think this is something that can be done, and we're happy to share experience with anybody who would be interested from the private sector. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, I would have to leave, but if you would allow me to invite Mr. Rashid Abdallah, the head of AFRIC, maybe at a later stage, tell you more about the program for energy efficiency we're having with the European Union, and also the African Union strategy for energy efficiency we have developed this year. Thank you, and I have to leave. I'm sorry.
Of course. Thank you very much for your participation. And thank you, Mr. Saeed. I just want to take the advertising opportunity to say that the Green Finance Academy and the Green Technology Selector are EBRD products, and I think the GEF is also a line from EBRD. But more importantly, you remind us that energy efficiency can't be separated out from water efficiency and food scarcity and these other very important issues. Mr. Kiptu Bagoria, can I come now to you? And Kenya, I should say, is one of the next African countries that we expect to start operating in. So we're obviously particularly interested to learn how Kenya is facing these challenges and what we might be able to contribute.
Thank you very much. I think coming at the tail end of the conversation is very important. Listening to Fatih, listening to the Commissioner, and the experiences of Uganda, Jordan, and also the multilaterals. I think what's ringing in my mind is the question around what is the nexus? How do we put together and have the conversations that are happening at COP29, that happened at COP28, the commitments that were made in COP28 around energy efficiency, the conversations that were in Nairobi at the last energy efficiency the conference organized by IEA, and how do we then put all this together? How does this all come together? Because that's really the question that's ringing in my mind. How do we then put together the conversations happening at a multilateral level? How do we put together the policies? How do we ensure that there's a good legislative framework? How do we ensure that there's regulation? And what the Honorable Minister from Uganda said, the issue of enforcement as well. And how do you then put this all together? I think from a Kenya context, we have made commitments in terms of energy efficiency at a policy level. We have also made commitments at a multilateral level, and working with IEA, working with the African Union and the Energy Commission, working also at a bilateral and multilateral level in the East African Power Pool in terms of having this conversation. I think the other issue that from putting my regulatory hat on is a question of public education and awareness, which is also very important, because when you talk to countries such as Kenya, we've done very well, where we have we've grown our access to up to 70% in the last decade, from between 2012 and 2023. One big question is the question of energy poverty and the question of access, because this is really the big nexus around how do we speak energy efficiency when we are still talking about access and the issue of energy poverty. But it's a question of creeping, and because at the end of the day is how do we make the most efficient use of the resources that we have, because when you become energy efficient, then that means the infrastructure that you have, well, it means that the generation capacity that you have can be able to serve more people. It's an issue of energy efficiency, but it also is an issue of efficient use of the resources that are available to you. So I think from a Kenya context, we've put together policies. We have what we call the Integrated National Energy Plan, which is a plan that puts together the energy needs of the country. Both we have a two-tier system of government. We have a national government and what we call a county government. So the responsibility of the minister, in Kenya we call them the cabinet secretary, is to look at the energy plan for the entire country, be able to pick up from what we call the county level, be able to put it together at the national level, be able then to come up with this integrated national energy plan. And one of the components of the integrated national energy plan is energy efficiency, and has a component and a module on energy efficiency. When it comes from the policy level now, when it comes to legislation, we have put together legislation that speaks to energy efficiency. We have regulations which are implemented by us as a regulator with respect to energy efficiency. But when we speak to energy audits, for instance, it has been on a voluntary basis. But what we're now developing is benchmarks, so that then we could then compel industries, we could then compel homes as well to be energy efficient. When it comes to performance and labeling as well. And I think this is where the issue of public education and awareness comes in. And has been said by the speakers before me, Africa has been a dumping ground for energy inefficient products. But then today, when I look at the energy space and I try and compare with the telcos, for instance, in sub-Saharan Africa, and taking the Kenyan experience, Kenya is very tech savvy. You have people who are changing phones every other month, every other year. So when you have the next Samsung Galaxy, when you have the next iPhone, there is a conversation around having that conversation with the populace and getting them to understand when we have performance and labels. For instance, for us as a regulator, we've been speaking to people in the malls, we've been speaking to people in the supermarkets, and trying to get them to understand that sometimes cheap is expensive. So I would buy a fridge today that is not energy efficient. But at the end of the day, then my monthly bill will spike by 30%. But it's an issue of public education and advocacy, and this is where regulators come in to come and speak to the people about these issues. Because at the end of the day, when we speak about this at the conferences, when we speak about this as policymakers, the question is, are we able to break down the conversation on energy efficiency to the public to get them to understand? Because today, in my rural home, my grandmother will want connection to power because it's a lack of connectivity, it's an access issue. Then 2 years later, she said, okay, well, I don't want to be heating my food every other time and being energy inefficient. She wants a microwave. She will then go to the supermarket and say, okay, well, I want a microwave. And the biggest driver will be a price issue. It's not an energy efficiency issue. So I think the big conversation in my mind is how do we put this as a nexus to connect the policy to the legislative, to the regulatory and the enforcement, and ultimately how do we then educate the populace? As has been said, you know, in sub-Saharan Africa, where you can see energy demand growing on an exponential basis, I think the missing conundrum is the issue of advocacy and education, which is a conversation we need to have as we put together the other three pieces. Lastly, it comes again to the issue of investment. And I like what the Commissioner said. When it comes to energy efficiency, we should not look only on the demand side of things. We need to talk about how to improve our infrastructure. Kenya, for instance, our power losses are about 22-23%. But it's a big number, but again, it's on account of a high period, or long period rather, of underinvestment in transmission and distribution. You have an aging grid. How do you ensure that you have then a smart grid? It comes back to investment. And that's why I think when it comes to the financial institutions and the multilaterals is how do we then invest in the infrastructure that makes our grid smart? How do we then ensure that also when it comes to industries, we then get industries coming into our economies, set performance benchmarks when it comes to energy audits and standards when it comes to enforcement as well, to ensure that we address this issue of energy efficiency end to end. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And again, you're one of the many panelists to emphasize appliances, and picking up actually where Dr. Birol started with the efficiency of air conditioners. And I was struck by your phrase also, the dumping ground, not becoming a dumping ground for appliances. So I think this panel should be a model of efficiency, and therefore I was proposing, unless any of the panelists particularly want to respond or to bring some further point, is I will actually just turn to Odile to conclude the panel by just, Dr. Birol, of course.
May I just say something? I have been attending a lot of meetings here, but I can tell you this is, to my surprise, to be very frank, one of the best meetings ever, because down-to-earth, real issues with discussions which could have real-world impact. So thank you very much for that. And 2 points. One, I like the idea of the Green Financing Academy or Clean Finance Academy. Congratulations to Jordan and also EBRD. I don't know if Jordan is the only one or you are doing other countries. Global. If you wish, we have a training team at the IEA on efficiency, on data, on investment. We'll be very happy to support in a free manner without asking for anything. So very good effort. The second thing is, Madam Minister mentioned Mr. Regulator and the Commissioner. Just to give you an idea how bad it is, the losses of transmission distribution. We talk about the 30%, 20%, and the average in the world is 7%. Just to show you how much the gap is, and with this loss, which is due to investment, but also lack of maintenance and monitoring as well of this transmission distribution lines, we could have brought a lot of electricity to many people with these losses. So therefore, this is a key issue. And over to you, Odile.
Thank you very much. And indeed, we're very happy to offer you a discounted place on the Green Finance Academy, if you like. Odile.
No, thank you very much. And just, I mean, it's difficult to conclude because indeed I found that very interesting. But just maybe few lessons also building on what our own experience in this area. And the first one is what you said about regulation. There is something which I didn't hear, but I think is very important in energy efficiency, is also price signal. And the fact that you need to have incentive at, individual level, household. So it's a lot about education, awareness, and so forth. But having price signals that create an incentive for, at all levels of the economy, household, businesses, and so forth, to work on energy efficiency, so that, I think that's a fundamental. We believe in market system, and market price are, I think, a key driver. The other thing is that we see, and the conversation was really very well reflecting that, it's that energy efficiency is everywhere. So it's from individual consumption, household heating, air conditioning, phones and equipment, to manufacturing and infrastructure. So it's everywhere. The third lesson, and I think that from what we've been doing, trying to finance projects in this area in our existing countries of operation, is the fact that you need to tailor the response, to take into account the local circumstances. And we've been working a lot, for example, at the city level with a Green City Action Plan. We have 60 cities having this Green City Action Plan, where we try on each, so the objective is the same, but we take into account the specific situation of the cities, the needs of the cities, in order to tailor what is a roadmap to address green challenges, being water, energy, enlightening, lighting of the street lighting, transport, mobility, and so forth. And the last comment is, I think, partnership. And the example of the work we've done with the bank Etihad, I think, is a very good. I mean, nobody can address the situation alone because it's so broad, so wide that partnering, building on each other's strengths and focus and so forth is the only way to be able to address that. So that's why we are so happy to work with the International Energy Agency, but also all of you to find solutions that are relevant for the countries in which we invest. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and very good to end on that note of partnership. And thank you to our panelists indeed.